we're walking around and talking, and he goes, "You're not going to buy my house. You can't pay me what I want, but I believe in you, and I'll be your private lender on your next deal." Long story short, that one mailer and that one walkthrough, I have done over 90 private loans with this couple now, all because of one mailer.
All right. Welcome to another episode of the 0 to 100 podcast, where we are all about scaling your passive income, not just to achieve financial freedom, but also to achieve time freedom, and doing that through cash flow real estate. I've been taking a lot of advantage of my time freedom lately because I don't feel like I've been a host for a while. I was actually with our guests in Cabo. Then I was with my son in Orlando, and then I was with Travis in Fiji. So yeah, I've been taking lots of advantage of the time freedom that I have, that I've gained through cash flow real estate. But this podcast episode is not about me. We have an amazing guest today, Matt Aitchison, also known as Matty A. In fact, I didn't know your name other than Matty A for a long time. Matt Aitchison is a real estate investor, hoteler, and founder of, tell me if I'm saying this right, Amagos Hospitality Group.
Yep.
After building one of the nation's top real estate teams, Matt scaled into flipping hundreds of homes and now focuses on revitalizing boutique hotels and acquiring commercial shopping centers. He's also the host of the Millionaire Mindcast podcast, where he shares insights on wealth building, mindset, and entrepreneurship. Known for transforming undervalued properties into thriving assets, Matt empowers others to achieve financial freedom through his coaching and mastermind program. Matty A, welcome to the 0 to 100 podcast show.
What's up, my brother? How we doing?
Doing excellent. Yeah. How are you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm in a season of what feels like burning the candle at both ends, grinding away, but it feels like all of the right work and all of the right grinding, it feels congruent and aligned, which isn't always the case as a busy entrepreneur and business owner. So I'm in a good season right now, man.
Well, that's great. As busy as you are, when I saw you in Cabo, you seem pretty relaxed and focused. It's obviously not stressing you out too much, or at least you're not showing that.
Yeah. I mean, as you know, right? When you get a good team around you, I've never been the fastest, smartest, or strongest. So I'm just really good at surrounding myself with people who are much stronger in my areas of weakness. And fortunately, I've got just an awesome team around me that gives me a little peace and insanity, even at times of chaos, right?
Absolutely. Well, let's get into your story a little bit. When I met you, you were already kicking ass in real estate. I know you were transitioning to boutique hotels, and as of late, your focus has really been commercial type properties. But I'm curious to how you got started prior to real estate. What were you doing? And then how did real estate investing get on your radar? How did you start investing in real estate?
It started when I was 12 years old.
That's when I bought my first apartment building. I was 12. Yeah. I don't want anybody else to feel like they're behind.
That's a high bar, so I'm not that cool. My mom started, both my parents were corporate America, divorced when I was younger, and both of them were always my biggest cheerleaders of, hey, you don't have to go the corporate route. My mom was taking me to personal development seminars when I was like 12, 13, 14. And I remember her taking me to one in Orlando, Florida. And this is back when flipping and kind of the big conferences and breakouts were. And I remember I was 13, 14 years old, seeing people up on stage flashing $100, $200, $300,000 checks. And when you're at that age and you're young, right, you're just like enamored with the ability that you could make that much money in real estate. And so that was kind of what planted the seed, and at least was the initial spark. And it kind of was dormant going through obviously teen years and into college. And I worked for a guy for 4 years while I was down in Santa Barbara going to school down there. And that was kind of like my first exposure to small business entrepreneurship. He had like his own insurance shop. I was cold calling like $8 an hour and getting little bonuses per appointment that we set. And then eventually I worked my way up to kind of being one of his right hand, like assistants, executive admins. And he wanted me to take over his book of business. And I decided that I didn't want to do that. Insurance didn't really get me too excited. Still didn't know what I wanted to do. Moved back to Northern California, Sacramento, where I'm from, with that expensive piece of paper, and started interviewing at a bunch of different places for $45,000. And I wasn't even getting hired. And I was like, man, this is not feeling like it's aligned with what I initially had envisioned for myself. And crazy enough, I was scouring through Craigslist ads one day. Real estate mentor seeks real estate mentee. And little did I know that was come work for me for free. And I ended up working for a guy for a year for free. This was back in 2010, post-financial crisis. Northern California had a ton of foreclosures everywhere. So he was buying houses off the courthouse steps from wholesalers. I was doing kind of acquisition, project management, disposition. Eventually, I was kind of running the whole thing by the end of the year. He was clipping 50, 60 grand a house. I was making nothing. And I'm going, man, I know this whole process, but I'm broke. I don't have any money. I was living at home with my dad at the time. But one of my mottos in life is I'm dumb enough to believe in myself and smart enough to take action on my goals and kind of trust that if I give it my best effort and surround myself with the right people, the chips are going to fall in my favor. And that led me to my first flip. And I netted $106,000 on that flip at 21. And that was my light bulb, no looking back moment that kind of pushed me into real estate investing. And I kind of started building up a single family real estate team. I was flipping houses at the same time. And the second and third year, I went from 8 flips to 18 and then to 30, then north of 50. And that's when I met a lot of the guys at GoBundance. And I started hearing about this thing of horizontal passive income. And I was making good money, trading time for money on flips, which are only as good as your last deal. So I started flipping 2, holding 1, flipping 2, holding 1, and started building up my single family portfolio. And then I started managing those and seeing all the work that went into that and going, man, there's a lot of work that goes into these for maybe $200 a month in cash flow. And I'm going to need a lot of doors in order to get to where I want to go. And so that's when I came up for air again and started looking around going, who's got the business and the model and the reputation and the lifestyle that I want? And most of the people were all in commercial real estate. So that kind of led me into buying my first shopping center, which I did using 100% of OPM, brought that flippers mindset over to just a small neighborhood strip center. And that got me in the game. And then that led to me buying my first hotel, then my second, my third. I started buying more of the active commercial was my hotels and business model there because it really wasn't anything passive about it. It was a full-fledged operating business. And then I started going, man, I need to, diversify with some more boring passive income real estate, which then led me into buying some medical office buildings and more shopping centers. And kind of have been in and out of a lot of different asset classes. Of course, there's a lot of failing forward moments in there, and I'm sure we'll uncover a lot of those. But it really helped me get clear on my passive income plan, what I wanted to achieve. My number was $500,000 a year in passive income over the next decade when I first started getting into commercial real estate. I'm sure we can break that down, but that's what the journey looks like, brother. And that's where you find me at today with kind of creative finance deals, commercial real estate, starting to play in some development opportunities, and just continue to find opportunities and spaces that I can challenge myself in that also feel aligned with my goals and the lifestyle that I'm continuing to build.
Amazing story. A lot to unpack there. A lot to unpack. I want to go back to you at 12 years old. You said your parents were corporate America, but your mom was taking you to personal development seminars and then some real estate seminars. I'm just curious, why was she going to these? Being in corporate America, what drew her to these personal development seminars and to real estate seminars? Was she looking to create some other income outside of her job? Was she just looking for motivation? Any idea why she went and then why she took you?
I know that my mom was kind of always that. My dad was the slow, steady, you put him in a path and he'll stay there for the next 30 years, no problem. And he wouldn't be dissatisfied by it whatsoever. My mom, complete opposite, dreamer, bigger goals for herself, wanting more for her life. And therefore, she was very unsatisfied in corporate America. Kind of a cool story. Now, my mom has been my COO and operations manager for the last 8 years that I pulled her out of corporate America eventually and brought her into my business. And so we get to work together and it's really awesome. Obviously, not all family members work well together, but my mom and I work amazing together, have different skill sets, have the ability to work respectfully and still, when we're on the field, be on the field and play our roles and be accountable to each other. And when we're off the field, being mother and son. And we just have a great relationship. So I feel extremely fortunate for that. But I knew that she was very unsatisfied and always desired to learn and grow and was always reading and wanting to find an edge to maybe break out of corporate America eventually. And who knew that it was her taking me to those things and me going out to become an entrepreneur and start a business that would actually pull her out of corporate America and give her kind of that.
And that's better than, hey, thanks, mom. He took you there and then fast forward all these years later. And just like you said, you create an opportunity to take her out of corporate America.
But we talk about mindset all the time, and mindset's such an important piece of this game. I think everybody, even Kiyosaki said it, Everybody wants to skip past the mindset chapter, even in our book or his book. But that's, God, man, you got to start with that. And to have your mom have the foresight to take you, what a gift. I've never thought about that. And I'm absolutely going to do that with my kids. I'm going to take them just to listen to people. Maybe I'll have them listen to Gabe, I'll invite Gabe.
It's funny, right? Because when you think about it, I know at least it was for me, growing up now and being a little wiser, you look back and a lot of the things your parents said, you're like, I knew what they were doing there. That makes sense why they said and did that. But at the time, I wasn't having none of it. But when the guy up on stage said the exact same thing, but maybe just packaged up in a different way, I'm like, wow, life changing.
Your parents tell you and you're like, my parents are old. They have no idea
what the hell do they know? Right.
Well, that guy's holding a $100,000 check. I'm going to listen to him.
So I felt
that's what it was for you. I know it. It was the check. So they were
100%. It was the big checks and the money and the vacations and all that kind of stuff, which I think at the end of the day, when you think why a lot of people get into wealth building, it's not because they want to become a better human. That's not the lead intention behind why you step into this space, this industry, looking at these vehicles. But over time, you realize, one, money becomes maybe less important to you and is more of just a resource to optimizing the impact you want to have, the person you want to become. And it's kind of that Trojan horse that gets people into the space and gives them a little bit more of an opportunity to explore those things. And that's what real estate investing has done for me. It's unlocked so many amazing things that I've been able to learn and grow as an individual, share that with my team, make an impact in the communities that I'm investing in. And so I'm extremely grateful that my mom was taking me to those things, because looking back, I had so many people telling me when I was in those conferences, you have no idea how lucky you are to be in this room at this age. And right, you don't know anything until you look back on it and you go, wow, I really was very fortunate to be in those rooms and just to be in proximity to the right conversations. Because I got expelled from high school and I got arrested early in college. And the reason for that was the conversations I was participating in and the environments I was putting myself in. I grew into becoming that dialogue and that outcome of the environment. And also when I joined other environments like a GoBundance or like other mastermind groups and was participating in the right conversations, I became the 10th person in those rooms that was learning and growing through osmosis. So I'm just a big believer in being in the right rooms, the right conversations, around the right people. It's cliched and regurgitated so many different ways that it probably desensitizes people to the fact that reality and truth is something so important. And a lot of cliches in life, right, are, I think, really important to like take a step back and digest and absorb, because there's so much wisdom and truth in why they're said so repeatedly as they are. And those are things that I try and check myself on and make sure that I'm continuously trying to learn and grow in ways that I know I need to and should want to in order to keep growing my business and my life in the way that I want it.
To unpack more of that, we talk about it all the time. A lot of people think they want to get into real estate for financial freedom. They realize it's time freedom. We want choices. Like, I was thinking about it. Mitch was giving me shit before I jumped on this podcast. He's like, you haven't been on for 3 weeks. I'm like, well, no, I was in Fiji for 2 of those weeks with Gabe and our wives and other couples, not other people's wives. And then Gabe was in Cabo the week before that. And I was like, what about the week before that? I was like, I was helping my dad. He had some medical stuff. He needed attention. And I was able to take the whole day off. Gabe's was able to spend quality time with his family. And so real estate, the right kind of real estate with true passive income, gives you choices and gives you time freedom, which truly, as we say that on the cover of the podcast, it's the true currency of the rich. But then also, just going back to you are who you surround yourself with. I love that you said there, like I hung out with people that drank too much probably and made stupid decisions. And so that I made stupid decisions. So I love that. I had a question for you going back to, you mentioned, I saw how this guy did it. He was making $60,000 a house, paying me nothing. But by the way, how you made nothing for that first year, you were a mentee.
Yep.
Would you say, if you were to quantify that education, people say I am a $100,000 MBA or $200,000 MBA, like for that first year working for free, how would you quantify that from a dollar figure? And then how would that compare to, say, a business level degree in a university?
I think if I really were to go back and equate it to all of the flip profits I made over the next 5 years, that in itself is somewhat of a tangible number that I probably would have never been on that path or found that level of confidence or maybe made that type of money without being in proximity to that guy, his business. And mind you, I learned a lot of what to do. I also learned a ton of what I didn't want to do or what I didn't necessarily align or agree with from business practices and his approach and mindset to things. So I think it's one of those things where I'm extremely grateful, not only for the financial and tangible aspects of it, but there were character and personality building blocks that were gifted to me through that experience that are intangible. And I think a lot of people miss this perspective sometimes is they just look for the monetary return or something tangible that they can wrap their hand around, that they can touch, feel, see. And I think in life, there's so many intangibles that it's really important to be open-minded to the idea that there are going to be things that serve you as a human in your psychology and your soul and your relationships that aren't going to show up on your P&L, but they could be equally as valuable, if not even more valuable over the course of your life. And so to think about those types of learning grounds, those spaces that you can step into and really learn and grow in a way that, yes, put more tangible tools on your tool belt that you can employ in your business and make more money and fund the life that you're looking for. But also, I think equally as important and oftentimes way more fulfilling and rewarding internally is like putting yourself in opportunities around people and spaces that can challenge you and grow you in ways that you can feel in your spirit, in your identity, that I know have probably paid me way more in dividend than just in general. I'll give you one little example here. That guy was a workaholic. He had no relationship with his kids. His wife hated him, but he was ripping down more cash than I'd personally at that point in my life ever seen anybody do. And I decided that because I knew I was going to want to have kids and a family one day, that when I go, and this ties in with one of my favorite quotes that we learned from a mutual friend, John Vroman. This was at a Front Row Dads retreat. He said, "Are you a family man with a business or a businessman with a family?" And it made me think about that guy. He was a businessman that just happened to have a family. Based on where the priority of the totem pole was at, his family, his wife, his kids, his health was way down on the bottom of the totem pole. It was all about money, and that was it. And for me, I knew that I didn't want that to be my totem pole. And so I got exposure to that. I learned some great skills. I figured out how to run the plays and get the X's and O's to score touchdowns and put points up on the board and make money. But even more important over the course of my life, now looking back, and as I say this out loud, I decided that I would forego making more money during the timeline that my kids were certain ages and I could be in proximity to them and pour into them, get that experience in a way that would provide massive ROI, not only to my kids, but to my marriage and to our family unit, versus prioritizing money. And so that one guy gave me something that I carried through and have. I got a 10, a 7, 1-year-old that is still paying dividend for me today just by learning that from him early on in my journey. So I think it's really important to remember that it's not just all about the tangible ROI on capital, but some of the things that you learn by being in those ecosystems around the right people and how they can impact the course of your life going forward.
Yeah, sure. It's like return on a relationship. Like we don't talk about it, but if you could quantify it, return on relationship, return on experiences. And those are oftentimes, like even in GoBundance, we have bucket list adventures, we have age defying health, we have these pillars, which I think is fantastic. And I think it's one of the best masterminds out there. But then we dive into our one sheets and it's like, what's your income? What's your expenses? And sometimes your expenses get high because you took a trip with your wife to Fiji or you did something cool with your family. And I think there needs to be a return on that. I'm curious how you bought that first house you flipped. You talked about having no money. You saw this guy kicking down tons of cash. First of all, what was the mindset what did you do to buy that first house? How did you finance it? And then tactically or mentally, like how did you overcome the limitation of your brain that says, I don't have money, which is the reason most people never get started in real estate. I don't have money. He does. I don't. I'm going to give up.
I subscribe to one simple ideology, which was an early mentor told me, you find a good enough deal and the money will follow it to the deal. And I literally just said, if there was one lie I can tell myself, is if I find a great enough deal, there will be no issues finding a way to get that deal across the finish line. And that it actually was true. I ended up finding literally the neighborhood cat lady house. I bought this house in 2010 it was $75,000 purchase price. And it was about a $40,000 remodel. And I remember signing, and mind you, I'm 21, fresh out of college, still living at home with my dad, credit card debt, all the normal stuff, right? That most people are dealing with, challenges on that side. And I remember getting this woman to sign the contract. And mind you, she had 118 stray cats in her home. We found 2 dead raccoons underneath all of the trash in her house. And I remember signing the contract. It was a 14-day close. I'm walking back to my car, and mind you, I'm fist pumping in my head, like, first deal. I'm so excited. I get into the car, and then I remember straightening up the mirror, and I look into the mirror, and it was like that oh shit moment where I'm like, wait, how the fuck am I going to pay for this house now? So I went back to my mentor, and she got me connected with a local hard money lender. And because it was such a great deal and it was so deeply discounted, they said, we'll give you 90% of the purchase price, and we'll give you 100% of the construction costs. And so I just needed to now figure out, at 10% down payment on a $75,000 house, $7,500 plus all of the holding costs during the time that I was rehabbing it and going to sell it. And so I think I needed to raise, it was close to 30 grand to kind of cover everything on the down payments and reserves, closing costs, all that kind of stuff. And I remember talking to maybe 30 or 40 people to try and get that money. Everybody said no. I convinced one person to go in second position. And that's how I got my first house 100% financed. And after I paid off the first and I paid off the second, I netted and walked away with $106,000. And that was a life-changing amount of money for somebody who's never made more than a couple $1,000 on a paycheck.
In one transaction.
One transaction. And that really led me to having this newfound confidence that if I can go out and find good enough deals and I have the right people around me, I will find a way to monetize the deal. Maybe I don't own 100% of it. Maybe I don't own even half of it. But if I can find good enough deals, I don't need to allow my concerns around my capital restrictions to prevent me from at least taking action and getting in the game. And so that was the mindset that I had.
Quick question for you. So we have some listeners that are probably in their early 20s, actually some that are even younger. We have some teenage listeners. I'm thinking of that 21-year-old, Maddie, and you said I asked 30 to 40 people. And I know there's people out there going, I don't know 30 to 40 people even to ask. And the whole reason I got into buying property with seller financing is because I knew nobody with money and I didn't feel comfortable. I knew no one in business, no one in real estate, no one with money. So I'm thinking about back to when I started putting deals together, I wouldn't even have known who to ask. So I'm curious, who are these 30, 40 people that you asked? How did you know them? And then who was the one person that said, yes, I'll finance that deal for you?
Yeah. So I call it the 3-tiered circle. You've got your inner circle, outer circle, and your social circle. Your inner circle is like your core group of people, right? Your friends, your family, the people who already oh, Maddie's trying to go be a real estate investor. Let's cheer him on, right? They already know you. They've got history with you. They trust you. Your outer circle, right, is people maybe in professional industries or through sports teams or just through you've got relationships with them, but they're not your trusted counsel, right? And then your social circle is, man, we all got a phone and a keyboard now. So you can get on and get into Facebook groups. I was going to Facebook groups. I was getting in person at meetups. I was doing anything and everything I could to be around the people that I knew were talking about the things that I was talking about, that were in the industry that I was in, and ultimately would understand the narrative that I was going to be presenting to them. And so that's where I started. I started with friends and family. Then I started with relationships and people that I've got some type of dynamic and relationship with. And then I just started reaching out to anyone and everybody that may have an interest in investing in real estate, right?
Which takes some cojones, by the way, to go out and reach out to somebody. It's like, hey, I've never done this before and probably really don't know what I'm doing, but would you give me $30,000 and you'll be in second position? And a lot of times people think you're asking for a favor. and you're begging for a favor, but you're really not. The person that lent you $30,000, the one person that said yes probably made some money. But I'm just like, kudos to you for going out to like John, the coworker you don't know, and asking for him to invest money in your opportunity.
Who said yes to you and why?
So it was a family friend after the fourth time I'd asked them. And it was all about, I think to your point, it's all about not asking, it's about presenting an opportunity, right? And I got to a place where I had given the pitch so many times, I'd started getting comfortable in how I was reworking my scripting in presenting this as an opportunity. And here's how you're protected. And here is my plan. And here's how we're going to mitigate risk, right? Because at the end of the day, when you're asking people for money, it's equally as important to show them how much they're going to make, but even in my opinion, more important to show them how you're going to protect them from losing. And that was something that, again, I always say, if you find a great deal, there's a way to present that deal in a way where you can get all of the puzzle pieces put together. And for me on that deal, I really had to get good at helping them understand, one, why this was an opportunity and why they were protected on their downside, and two, how this would be simple and seamless. And it's really answering a lot of those questions and objections, right? So that's what allowed me to get the deal across the finish line. And I drafted a promissory note, and we drafted a second note and deed of trust. So that way it was attached to the property, and the property is worth this much. So if we have to liquidate it or I run off to Mexico, you still have the ability to get your investment back. So it was a lot of those kind of things. But again, not knowing what I didn't know, it was really just getting in the batter's box and having the metaphorical pitchers throwing objections at me over and over and over again. And eventually I got good at hitting them. I got good at answering them. And that's going back to the statement of be dumb enough to believe in yourself and just smart enough to take action. You don't need to know everything. But if you can surround yourself with people who can cover those blind spots for you and poke holes in things, and what about this, and give you the confidence and affirmation to move forward with something or to cut loose on something, like those were the things that I relied heavily on in those early stages of not knowing a bunch of stuff. And looking back, man, I was so ignorant to so many things I didn't know, but I did get enough smart people around me that gave me the confidence to present things and to take action on things that I probably wouldn't have done if I was just trying to go alone. And I think that's a big thing to be said for early investors. I call it the watermelon effect. I would much rather see a new investor take just a sliver or slice of the watermelon and partner with the right people, or get the right consultants on board, or get the right capital partners in your capital stack put together, and everybody wins together. And then you learn, you build a reputation, you get new skills, you gain this new confidence. And now you've been through one and understand how the pros are going to do it. You may be made way less, but I'd rather you own a slice of a successful watermelon than 100% of a shriveled up raisin.
We call that in one of our 0 to something strategies to get started in the book. We talk about investing with someone with experience. And that's just that. I think people underestimate, they're just looking at the dollars and they're like, well, I'm only a 5% owner. Well, yeah, you're an owner. And by the way, when you're an owner, you build notoriety. First of all, you build confidence in yourself that you can do it. You learn priceless education, but you also build notoriety in the business, like in the world. Like if you're going to talk to brokers or wholesalers, I've done it. Here's one of my projects. Like people they underestimate the absolute power of getting that first deal done. And I also want to just stop for a second. For those of you that are listening, Maddie's effing relentless. This guy's relentless. Did you notice that he talked to 40 people and he has never done this before? And the person that said yes, it was the third or fourth time he talked to him. For those of you that are listening going, well, I look at Crexy and I look at the price and it's expensive and I move on and I can't find deals and there's no deals and this doesn't work. This guy's freaking relentless. And Gabe also, when he first started, me too, like you don't stop. I always use the term, you just literally chew your arm off until it works. And I think that's exactly what you did. And there were no excuses there. And a side note, we met in our Go Pod trip. We hung out with a Navy SEAL and he showed us like BUDS training, which like you talk about relentless. These SEALs, they will die before the ones that make it through will die before they say, I quit. And we asked him like, hey, we want to get on an aircraft carrier. The USS Abraham Lincoln was in port. And he's like, I don't know anybody. I've never been on an aircraft carrier. I don't know anybody. I'm sorry, guys. I can't do this. Like, I don't even know who to talk to. Like, it's highly restricted. I'm a captain or whatever. And he calls that night and he goes, okay, I got us on. He goes, I got to thinking about the fact that I said no and I quit. And I go, that's not a Navy SEAL. And that's certainly not me. And this guy called everybody he knew. He actually went and just cold called the ship, talked to like the officer on charge, and the officer in charge ended up knowing his brother from his hometown. Either way, he drove like an hour across town and cold called the ship because he told us no. And he's like, that's not me. I don't say no. We never say quit. So for those of you that aren't having success, to get started and to keep going, really, you got to be relentless.
Well, that's what it takes. And I think a lot of people aren't willing to do that. Like, it sounds good in theory, but we've interviewed a lot of people on this show, and there's so many parallels, so many similar stories. And a lot of it starts with obviously the mindset, but in the action piece, like actually go out there and do the thing, right? Whether it's 40 calls or knocking on 100 doors, whatever it is that relentless desire to succeed no matter what. Maddie, a question I have for you. You were 21. You made 6 figures on one flip. I've met a lot of 21-year-olds. I've been 21 before, believe it or not. For a lot of people, that's life-changing money, or it's money they've never seen before, especially at 21. What did you do with that money? I think a lot of 21-year-olds with 100K plus, that would be gone very fast and probably on some stupid shit that isn't serving them well. But it sounds like you had a plan, you had a desire. And at the top of the show, you kind of breezed through. Yeah, then I flipped 8 homes, then 18. And I think it's 100 plus now, right? So you said it pretty casually, like it was no big deal. But I'm sure there are a lot of things outside of just like, oh yeah, bought another home, flipped it, bought another home, flipped it. Like, for one, what did you do with that money? And then how did you continue to scale initially in the flipping business before you got into buy and hold stuff after that first deal?
Well, I can tell you, while most of my friends were going out and buying bottle service and doing all the fun stuff that 21-year-olds were doing, I didn't do any of that. I subscribed to the crock pot versus the microwave. So mind you, I'm a millennial. I pace in front of the microwave. I want the dish fast. But at the end of the day, I think we can all agree that the microwave doesn't put out anywhere close to the outcome of a beautiful crock pot dish. But that takes time, right, for those ingredients to come together. And so I really subscribe to the idea that if I'm going to play this game long term, then I got to put the right ingredients in the recipe. And so pretty much all of that money went right back into my business. And I just kept parlaying that forward. I don't know if it was you and I that were talking when we were in Cabo, or who I was talking with, but it was, and I think most successful real estate investors probably over the first decade can relate to this, is it feels like you're living broke to get rich. And it's like you're constantly pushing yourself to step outside your comfort zone and redeploy capital and to play this game of kind of real life Monopoly. And that takes time, and it takes reinvestment, and it takes discipline. And so even to this day, outside of a couple trips, I just bought my first car that I've ever owned 2 years ago. I really wanted to reinvest all of that capital back into the opportunities that I thought were going to be stepping stones to getting me to where I wanted to go. And that's why I decided that I was going to continue to invest in mastermind groups and coaching and really like pouring into myself and my business. And I didn't really buy any material things. And that was tough because there was a lot of people that were making good money around me and that were spending money on trips and cars and material things. But I've always been a big believer that I would much rather invest in people and experiences or memories over things. And I still subscribe to that. And that's ultimately the mindset that I've had over the last 15 years I've been investing.
And then how'd you scale into those next couple flips? It's not like you did one, made 100 grand and called it a day. You continued to flip properties, and then you had success there, and then you parlayed that into some buy and hold stuff.
Yeah, I think this is also another good reminder that you never know where your next life-changing relationship or opportunity is going to come from. Some of that money that I took out of that paycheck was I started doing direct mail, pretty heavy direct mail. And I started sending mailers out to free and clear portfolios and people who own their assets. And I ended up going and touring this one house one day. And I met this couple that were in their maybe mid 60s. And mind you, I'm 21, so I'm trying to be all professional and look dialed in because I didn't feel dialed in or professional whatsoever. And I'm walking through this house and I meet the guy and we're walking around and talking and he goes, "You're not going to buy my house." And I'm like, "Well, yeah, I'd love to make you an offer, right?" And he goes, "No. You're not going to buy my house. You can't pay me what I want. But I really like you. I like how you carry yourself. And I was talking about flipping and growing my business and all this kind of stuff. And he goes, I believe in you. I want to sell this house and I'll take the proceeds and I'll be your private lender on your next deal. And so long story short, that one mailer and that one walkthrough, I have done over 90 private loans with this couple now. They're in their mid 70s. I go over and have breakfast at their house every month. I call them my aunt and my uncle now. They don't have any kids and they're private lenders. And I've done probably over 14 or $15 million in private loans with them over the course of the last 12 years, all because of one mailer. That couple changed my life. That one mailer changed my life. And so again, you never know when you just are so committed to the process and you're so committed to the outcome that no matter what the timeline is or what challenges stand in your way, you fall into this level of like surrender and comfort that, it's just part of the journey. It's just part of the path. And mind you, that could be like, ooh, this is great. This is part of the journey. This is one of my stepping stones, or those could be the valleys, right? And the failing forward moments of going, man, that sucked. I've had a lot of learning lessons that have hurt along the way that have led to sleepless nights, but this is the journey that I chose to be on. This is the path I chose to be on. This is part of the process. Like I need to lean in and learn from this and grow from this. So just like when you get the challenges that come along the way, you also get the mailers that unlock a relationship that changes the course of your life, right? You get the deal that changes the course of your life. And that's why I love real estate so much. Personally, why I've fallen even more in love with commercial real estate is because one deal could completely transform your financial future and not only your life, but now we're talking about changing your kids' lives, changing your grandkids' lives, changing the communities, changing the investors that decide they want to work with you and their families. There's just so much opportunity out there to be collaborative, to be creative, to create real impact and unlock, as you said, not only financial freedom, but more importantly, the time freedom to control and design and architect your life in commercial real estate. In my opinion, at least in the real estate investment vehicle and arena, is by far the best space that you can do that in.
Well, also like activity generates results. I used to say that when I was managing salespeople, and we say that to our coaching, to our elites here in 0 to 100, in our mastermind, like get out there and do something. And you did something. Like you didn't quite know if it was going to work, but you did a mailer and you did a lot of it. And something begats the next thing. You did parlay into commercial real estate. You mentioned, let's get back to your scale journey. You got into shopping centers. So tell us about that first shopping center. That was your first, I'm assuming that was your first commercial deal after you were doing single family holds. Do you still hold these assets? Do you still hold these single families? Did you parlay those into the shopping center? Like what was the bridge to the shopping center? Tell us about how you finance that. Tell us about that deal.
And real quick, Travis and Maddie, before we get into that, I just want to emphasize the story that you just shared, and any of our listeners, go back and listen to that again, because what Maddie explained there, like it's such an example of, I know I say a lot, like you're one relationship, one idea, one conversation away from taking your life to the next level. And I think sometimes there's opportunities in front of you that if you're not open to seeing, you're never going to recognize it. So here's Maddie looking to buy a home to flip. And because he was in the arena, because he was there and understood there was an opportunity outside of just flipping a home, that this seller became a private money lender. I've watched other people have opportunities in front of them and they don't even recognize it because they're not open to that. And so if you do anything, go back and listen to that story 2, 3, 4 times, whatever it takes, because often we have people in our lives, we come across people that present opportunities that if we're not open to it, we're not going to recognize that and we're not going to take action. It's just such a good example of being in the right room with the right person, but also executing on an opportunity that you weren't even looking for at that time.
Well, I've got something to add to that, which makes this story a little bit cooler. They were my first private loan on my commercial shopping center that I bought. They were my first private loan on the first boutique hotel that I bought. So I would have never gotten into shopping centers or hotels if it wasn't for that one mailer that I sent.
Now I'm glad I interrupted Travis's question because this parlays into that.
It does. And so on that note, going back to relationships, was buying some single family stuff from a little broker team. And then they started pivoting over to commercial real estate. And because I had a good relationship with them, they brought me that shopping center. It was off market, just a little neighborhood strip center, nothing too crazy. And It was undervalued, had some upside to it. And mind you, again, I didn't know a ton about commercial real estate at this time. I'm just like, seems like an opportunity. Let me try and mitigate my risk. Let me get the smarter people to take a look at these things. I got at least felt validated. And I did the same thing like I did on my first flip. I got a private money first. I leveraged a private money second. And this was based on a model of creating more value in terms of driving some of the rents and the cash flow, optimizing the net operating income, inflating the equity enough to a level where I felt like I had plenty of room to recapitalize and refinance that deal. And that's what I did. I was able to basically stabilize the asset and maximize the cash flow and the value of it. I refinanced it, I think within 18 months, got the private money first out, got the private money second out. And that was ultimately what led to me keeping that building. It cash flowed about $48,000 a year net when all was said and done, which was awesome. My model is I like to buy at least one commercial real estate asset a year that nets $50K. You do that for 10 years straight, just one property, you're at that $500K a year passive income mark. And so I actually just sold that asset. My first commercial property I ever bought, I just sold it 3 weeks ago. I'm currently in a 1031 exchange. And after optimizing the equity there and looking at what kind of return I was getting on that equity, I felt like it was capped out. So repositioning the portfolio and looking at new opportunities where I can parlay the equity growth into another deal that I can either rinse and repeat that kind of same model, or maybe it's something a little bit more stable and secure, but less yield. So depending on where you're at in your real estate journey, you can find real estate investments that are suitable to what your needs are for capital returns, for the time and energy and the management that you want to put into it. And that's where I'm at on that one. But to answer your question, Travis, I'm an active commercial real estate investor. This is my business. I eat, sleep, and breathe it all day, every day. So this isn't like I got a W-2 and I diversify some income over here and it's more of like a hobby or an investment vehicle for me. This is my active day-to-day operating business. So a lot of my assets, I will ultimately, I'm an opportunistic and a value add purchaser. I'm market agnostic. I'm asset agnostic for the most part. And most of those opportunities are value add, where I go in, I optimize the income, I stabilize the operations and the expenses. I drive as much NOI to the bottom line, try and compress the cap rate as best we can, inflate the value, and then either cash out for the investors or 1031 that if it's something that I own solely by myself into other opportunities. And so playing real life Monopoly now, you get 10 years into owning commercial real estate. I know, Gabe, you and I were talking about this. It starts to get fun because you can either keep and hold for cash flow long term, or you can start to sell off some stuff and reposition some things. And so that's where I'm at in my portfolio right now.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. I think real estate gives you more options. I think about and say often, it's like I'm always in a better position and have more options and more levers to pull because I own real estate, because I made the decision to buy that first single family home or to sell or finance those first 4 units, whatever it might be. You fast forward and you do it long enough, you're always in a better position and have more options, more opportunity for freedom, more choices because you own real estate. And then it really is a game. And I think I've had people get upset when I talk about wealth building or real estate as a game. But when you treat life as a game, it's fun to play. When you create opportunities to win and succeed. And it really is, real estate investing, it really is real life Monopoly, and it can be fun. And not that there's not challenges and valleys, but I know for me, there was no other option. Like real estate made sense. And I know for you and a lot of other guests, like when you look at life as a whole, the financial piece to that, oftentimes real estate is the thing that sets them apart and gives them the opportunity that they may not have outside of real estate investing.
Well, and I'm not perfect at this, but you'd mentioned the valleys. It is a game. And you have seasons that are challenging. Like, I think too many people listen to podcasts like this, or they see the jackass cashing the check in front of the rented Ferrari online. But there are valleys and there are challenges, and you do lose money and you do get you get emails multiple sometimes in a day that's bad news, or you might get a troubling phone call, or sometimes you can have big challenges. And I think if you look at it as a game, like if you're playing Monopoly, you're sitting cash poor, but you're sitting on a bunch of property and maybe a couple of them are flipped over, they're mortgaged, right? You're trying to figure out how to solve a problem. Maybe you just landed on Boardwalk, but you don't own it with a hotel. The fun part about is the problem solving sometimes. And if you can look at those challenges through that lens, I think you're going to have a much better outcome. It's like, okay, maybe you crawl into your desk, suck your thumb, lament for 10 minutes, cry in your Cheerios, and then get back up and like, okay, how do I solve this problem? How do I learn from this problem? How do I turn lemonade out of lemons? So I'm curious, Maddie, what is your current portfolio? Because you have hotels, you have strip malls, single family houses still. Like maybe give us an idea of what it looks like 15 years later after you did that first flip.
Yeah. Before we tap into that, I think you brought up something that's super important because I think a lot of people, I know for me, I don't know about you guys, when I was like, I'm going to be a real estate investor. And then I was like, I'm going to be flying on private jets and life's going to be great. And there's no problems whatsoever. I just decided to play as a real estate investor now. And to your point, it is hard. Every day there are challenges. I think as you get in the space long enough, I know for me personally, and hotels really shocked my system in this way where when you're running hotels, there's nothing passive about it. There's always a fire. There's always a complaint. There's always an employee issue. There's always something going on. And I remember like getting so worked up about things that I'm like, hold on, I'm going to die if I get worked up about every little problem that happens every single day. And in real estate investing, I think as I got through more problems and I really just opted into saying like, and this is something I had to communicate to my team too. I'm like, every day we're going to have a problem. So I don't want to see anybody's hair on fire. I don't want to see us unraveling and like literally losing our sanity because this is part of the equation of what gets us to the outcome we want. So you almost have to desensitize yourself to the idea that you're going to be dealing with problems every day. And that's just par for the course, right? But it goes back to that kind of like choose your hard, right? Depending on what industry or what career path you take, there's going to be hard in every one of those paths, right? So I was like, well, if I'm going to have hard in my life, I want it to be high ROI hard. If I solve these problems, if I have these skills that are high returns on my investment, returns on my time, returns on my skills, I'm willing to go through and deal with all those problems. So that's the hard I think I'm going to choose, right? So I think it's just important to remember, especially if you're a new real estate investor, that yeah, there's going to be the sleepless nights and there will be the challenges.
And you will write checks sometimes.
Yeah, a lot. And sometimes that pain will have to do with money, hopefully a few times. But I think just a really good point, right? I know for me, it was like when you go through fire and you just like, sometimes you think like, man, I'm not going to recover from this, or man, this is going to happen, or I'm going to go bankrupt, or this is challenges. I don't know how to have this conversation with an investor. I'm losing money, or whatever it is. You get through it, you come out the other side, and I always go like, yeah, all right, my heart's still beating. And I'm like, okay, does my wife still love me? Yep, my wife still loves me. All right, do my kids still think, okay, my kids still love. At the end of the day, like keeping that perspective around what's really important in life and just knowing like, hey, we got to deal with some of these challenges. But to answer your question, Travis, right now I've got commercial shopping centers, boutique hotel, and some medical office properties. No more single family except for one that I'm trading out of this year. And I'm just going to basically pay the taxes on that, on the cap gains, and just put a little additional capital because I'm working through a big development. I'm redeveloping an 80,000 square foot shopping center and getting ready to start the build out for TJ Maxx on that, and hopefully Harbor Freight right behind that. So I'm stabilizing that shopping center. I'm closing on a little mobile home park in the next couple weeks. That's 100% a finance deal. That's going to be no money out of pocket. So that's a fun little one that I'm getting across the finish line. And that one might be fun to talk about maybe if time permits, but that one's going to net a good chunk of money. And that purchase price is less than $700,000. And so like for people that are going like, you got to do $10 million deals to have any kind of significant needle mover in commercial real estate. That's not true. And it's not the case. I know, Gabe, I've heard so many of your amazing creative finance stories. And I'm like, it's just a reminder that there's so many ways to make money and to really move the needle forward on your goals. And you don't have to be doing $10, $20 million deals to actually have something significant and impactful happen in your life. But I would say my two main core focuses are boutique hospitality and shopping centers. I love those. I understand those really well. One is extremely management intensive. The other can be obviously pretty passive. So I like having a little bit of that duality in my portfolio. And we've got great systems and teams that have been built up to manage and operate both of those asset classes.
And you invest across the country, mostly Northern California.
Yep. Again, market agnostic. So I've got 5 different states that I'm currently investing in.
Travis and Mitch are mobile home park guys. I own several mobile home parks, although I do really like the triple net commercial stuff. But give us kind of a quick breakdown of this $700,000 mobile home park. How'd you find it? How are you financing it? What's the cash flow look like?
So I'm selling one of my commercial buildings. I sold one of my commercial buildings, one of my medical office buildings, to free up. I think I have about $2 million in equity in that. And I was negotiating on this boutique hotel for 3 years prior. It ended up not working out. It went back to the bank. I tried to build a relationship with the bank in the meantime, knowing that it was probably going to go back to them. They called me 18 months later and said, hey, we actually ended up taking this asset back. Would you still be interested in purchasing it? So I was going to buy it for $8.7 million. I'm in contract at 4.7. And I convinced the bank to partner with me on the deal. So they're going to leave the difference between my purchase, the equity I'm bringing to the deal. They're leaving that cash in on the deal. So it made it an all equity deal.
So the bank's going to be an equity partner of yours?
Yes.
Oh, that's super cool.
Yeah. So that's a whole nother crazy story of how that came about. But that being said, I had about $650,000 in debt replacement that I needed that I couldn't get on that hotel deal because it was going to be an all equity deal.
For the 1031 exchange, you're saying?
For my 1031 exchange.
You got to have equal or greater debt.
Correct. You got to replace the debt of whatever the loan was on the asset that you're selling. You got to have equal, if not higher, same debt amount on the new asset that you're buying or new assets. So I was like, well, I got to go buy another asset if I'm going to not have to pay boot on this debt replacement. So I've been negotiating with this gal for some time who brings me some deals every once in a while in Wyoming. And she just happened to bring out a mobile home park at $1.4 million. And she's like, hey, I don't know if this will work for you, but these sellers just inherited it from their parents. They were actually born and raised in the mobile home park. They don't want to operate the mobile home park. And there's 8 of the 13 pads right now are not paying rent because they're all family that was raised in the mobile home park together.
You told me about this deal in Cabo. This is interesting.
So I was like, okay, so it sounds like there's some upside to capture some rents. And anyways, I went, well, to be totally honest, I'm not a mobile home guy, but if they're willing to carry paper back, I would love to present an offer. She said, yeah, they're open to that, but they want to get some cash up front and this and that. And so I was like, okay, well, how do I get into this with no cash and still get all the debt that I need? So I basically just reverse engineered it and said, here's my offer. My offer is at $600,000 and it's going to be a 100% finance deal. I got a bank that'll do 75% of it. Your seller's going to carry back 25% in second position at no interest for the first 12 months while we stabilize the asset, and I'll recapitalize it within 2 years. And countered back and forth kind of what they needed, cash up front, this and that. Long story short, we ended up at $660. So it met my $650,000 debt requirement. The bank is going to cover 75% of that $660. The seller is going to carry back the remaining 25% on a second note, and that'll be at 0% interest. Or no, we landed at 3% interest, 0% for the first 12 months. And essentially now 100% of that deal is financed on the purchase price outside of, I think my fees are the appraisal fee, a couple doc fees, and some closing costs and some reserves. So I think I'll be into it for like maybe 35 grand or something like that. But the deal, just from day one, going from none of the family members paying rent to the family members now signing leases with us on 8 of the 13 pads, it puts the debt service coverage ratio at 2.4. And it is going to generate around about $40,000 net per year when all is said and done.
And your cash on that is very, very high with $35,000 into the deal.
Yeah. And I mean, the IRR on it is silly once we get the final optimization in there. So again, there'll be some heavy lifting. There'll be some optimization there, but those deals are out there.
I have a question for you on that deal. You'd mentioned, and I know we got to wrap up here in a second. You had mentioned, how do I get into this deal with no money? I love that thinking. And I think when you have a lot of success and you have a lot of money in the bank, you get lazy. And that's the thing that Mitch and I talk about. And you lose sort of that, and I'm guilty of this, you lose that entrepreneurial edge where you're like, oh, I'll put $300,000 in of my own capital and What made you ask yourself that question on that deal? Or do you ask yourself that question on all of your deals?
I try and ask that question almost on every deal. I think that is, I don't want to say like that's some superpower or anything like that. If anything, to me, it's more so of if I can make this deal work with none of my own money in it, why would I not? And if anything, if I can create more opportunities to get more investors to come into the deals with me and help more people win, the better. Once you start getting into bigger deals, right? Of course, investors want to see that you've got some skin in the game and things like that. But this just happened to be one of those deals where I'm not raising any capital from anybody else. So it doesn't really matter if I have skin in the game or not. It was more so of me, because I think a lot of people look for all of the reasons why they can't do something. And I like to look for all of the reasons how I can do something and then determine if that's a path that I want to pursue and go down. And so I think one of the best lenses that real estate investors could always put on when they're analyzing deals is looking at how can I creatively structure this outside of the box that creates a win-win, especially in times like right now where it's a stale, stagnant, challenging market in a lot of ways. Seller thinks their property's worth this. Buyers, because of interest rates and economic modeling, think it's worth this. And so there's a big gap in there. Well, I always tell people why I love commercial real estate is you can get as creative as the minds on each side of the table are willing to get. And therefore, if you can get creative minds and understand what everybody's goals are, there's a lot of different ways we can put these puzzle pieces together to make that goal work for your side and for our side. And so for me, it was understanding what are their capital needs? What are their motivations? What are their pain points? What is their timeline? And from there, I was like, okay, after doing this enough times, after having enough conversations with Gabe and hearing how he thinks, right? And you be around other creative minded individuals, listening to podcasts like this, you start to understand like, oh, what if we tried this? Or what if we moved this around here and tried it this way? And that's what you can do in creative finance deals with real estate.
And real estate being the operative word, it's a imperfect market, which allows you the creativity to play the game. Unlike the stock, well, I guess you get somewhat creative in the stock market. I'm an idiot when it comes to the stock market, but the price is the price. You pay the price, you get the shares, you sell the shares, the price is the price. But with real estate, there's all of these levers you can pull.
Yeah. So to wrap up on that point, it was just one of those deals where I said, I also know that it's not a deal I have to do. It's a deal that I would like to do. And so when you come to the table already being willing to walk away if you don't get exactly what you're looking for, which I think is negotiating 101, always know when and where you're willing and have to walk away. To me, it was, hey, I'm going to present them based on knowing everything I know about what they need and trying to accomplish what I need. And if we can find a meeting of the minds, we got a win-win. If we can't, that's okay. I'm willing to walk away. And ultimately, that deal ended up penciling.
Well said. Matt, it's been an awesome podcast.
This has been great, man. Like you know what you're doing with real estate and podcasting or something. It's weird.
Yeah, awesome stuff. Awesome stuff. Maddie, thank you so much again for being on the podcast.
Appreciate you guys having me.
We do have one last question, Gabe. I think you almost forgot.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Travis.
Okay, so you lost everything, right? We ask all our podcast guests this. You've lost everything. You BK'd. You have no cash in the bank. You have no real estate. You're down to zero. Maybe you're less than zero. And you have no network. That's important. All the people you've met, all the relationships you've made are gone. And you're hanging out on a buddy's couch, but you have all of your knowledge and all of your experience. What's the first thing you do? You get up that first morning. What do you do that day? What do you do that week? What do you do that month? What do you do that quarter?
Very, very easy. I just start pounding the phones. That's an easy one for me. I think in real estate investing, the highest ROI skill is your mouth. And most people are undercover investors and they don't use their mouth enough. And if you can be somebody that, again, if I still got my knowledge and I still got my character, my integrity, and all of the kind of building blocks that I think are important, I can trust in my ability to go out and generate opportunity and find ways to bring value to people by using my mouth and by using the determination and the grit that I have to go and find those opportunities. And so I think that's probably the number one thing I would say is in real estate, highest ROI skill you can have is being a good cold caller, being just a good communicator. If I were to be super tactical, something that I'm actually having a lot of success with right now, especially if I didn't have a network and I was trying to rebuild industry connections and things like that, I've been using a LinkedIn strategy that essentially consistently generates new connections and opportunities to dialogue with other professionals in my industry. And it's wild how many people are showing up in my inbox. I'm converting them over to a Calendly call, getting on a Zoom call with them, getting some face-to-face time, understanding what they're looking for. And I would just get back to building my database. I always look at it as be a farmer. Raw dirt. If you don't have a network, you got a raw piece of land. And what do farmers do when they have a raw piece of land? They get out there and they rototill the dirt. They start planting seeds and they start nurturing and watering and attending to their crops. And eventually, you're going to look up and see a land full of crops, full of yield that are coming off of those things. But it just takes time, right? And so again, patience, discipline, and just staying the course. Small little actions like that eventually lead to big results.
Love it.
Well said. Well said, Matty. Thank you again for being on the podcast.
Thanks, guys.